A freezing puppy clawed snow from a military footlocker as the scratching inside suddenly stopped. Former Navy SEAL Elias Ward cut the chain while the blizzard erased the dock. Inside, a fading mother cat curled around 3 newborn kittens. Then Elias saw a dead Navy diver's name stamped beneath the ice. If you believe God sends help through unexpected hands, stay with this story. By 7 in the morning, Lake Superior had disappeared. The water was still out there somewhere beyond the abandoned ore dock, but the snow had erased the line between lake and sky. Wind drove off the ice in long, white sheets, striking the windshield of the county rescue truck hard enough to sound like handfuls of sand. Elias Ward kept both hands loose on the wheel and watched the road markers vanish one by one. The Weather Service had given Blackfear County 3 hours before the lake effect squall became a full whiteout. Elias figured they had been optimistic. He was checking the old service road because people ignored locked gates whenever a frozen lake promised good fishing. It was the sort of work he had taken after leaving the Navy: quiet preparation, practical instruction, the unglamorous business of keeping volunteers alive long enough to bring somebody else home. At 30, he still carried the broad, heavily muscled frame of a man built for boats and hard landings. His dark brown hair, longer now than the Navy had allowed, had escaped his wool cap in wind-blown waves. Short stubble darkened his square jaw. He slowed near the remains of Pier 9. Rusted loading towers rose through the storm like the bones of some enormous animal. No tire tracks crossed the road ahead. No headlights moved behind him. Then something black darted through the snow. Elias touched the brake. The truck slid half a foot before the tires found gravel beneath the powder. A small animal stood 20 yards ahead, nearly lost against the broken pilings. It lowered its head into the wind, stumbled, and disappeared behind a drift. "Come on," Elias murmured. "Don't make me guess." He pulled on his gloves, zipped his parka to his chin, and stepped outside. The cold found every seam at once. Snow rattled against his hood. He left the engine running, set the hazard lights, and walked toward the place where the animal had vanished. A thin German shepherd puppy was digging beside the concrete base of the old dock. She could not have been more than 4 months old. Wet black and tan fur clung to her narrow body, showing ribs that should have been hidden beneath a puppy's softness. One ear stood upright, the other folded under the weight of ice. She dug with both front paws, stopped to press her nose into the snow, then dug again. Her movements were frantic but weakening. Each time she scraped away a layer, the wind pushed more powder into the hollow. Elias crouched several yards away. "Easy, girl." The puppy spun, her paws spread for balance, and a growl came from her chest. It lacked strength, but not purpose. She placed herself between Elias and the drift. He turned his shoulders slightly instead of facing her square. "I see you." The puppy stared at him. Snow gathered along her muzzle. For a second, Elias thought she might run. Instead, she looked back at the hole she had made, whined once, and resumed digging. That was when he saw the metal. He moved closer by inches. Beneath the powder sat the corner of a steel footlocker, painted the blue-gray once common in naval storage rooms. A chain crossed its lid. Along one side, just above the ground, someone had drilled a row of round holes. The puppy was clearing those holes. Elias's right hand closed around the blue and silver cord bracelet beneath his glove. He had made it from a length of rescue line after a cold water operation years earlier. Most days he forgot it was there. On bad days he could feel every knot. He studied the ground. Snow had softened the marks, but a wide tire tread curved away from the dock. Dark grit still showed inside the deepest grooves. Fresh. Near the footlocker, a shallow patch of snow had melted and frozen into a glassy skin, as though something warm had rested there before the storm stripped the heat away. The puppy had not been outside all night. Maybe an hour, 2 at most. It was still too long. Elias took one careful step. The puppy lunged forward and snapped at the air, then nearly fell. He stopped. She recovered, returned to the footlocker, and clawed at the lowest hole. From inside the steel came 3 faint scratches. Elias held his breath. The sound came again, slower this time. Scratch, pause, scratch. Then nothing. The puppy thrust her nose against the hole and cried out, a sharp, broken sound that carried even through the wind. She began digging with new desperation, scraping one paw against bare steel. "All right," Elias said. "We do this together." He backed toward the truck without turning away from her. The puppy stayed at the locker, though her eyes followed every step. Elias opened the side compartment of the rescue vehicle and took out a compact bolt cutter, 2 thermal blankets, a trauma bag, and a soft utility sling. When he returned, he placed the blankets on the snow and set the cutter where the puppy could see it. She growled again. "I know, loud tool, strange man, terrible morning." His voice stayed low. "But I need the chain." He offered the back of his gloved hand. The puppy stretched forward, sniffed once, and retreated. Elias waited. The cold pressed through his knees. Finally, she touched her nose to his glove. It was not trust, it was permission measured in seconds. Elias slid the cutter beneath the chain. The puppy flinched at the metallic scrape, but did not leave. He braced both handles against his chest and squeezed. The frozen link resisted, then split with a hard crack. The puppy barked and pushed against his forearm. Elias lifted the chain away and found a small padlock holding the latch. One more cut freed it. He expected the lid to rise. It didn't. Ice sealed the rim. Elias worked the flat end of a rescue bar into the seam. The steel groaned as he leaned down. For one unwelcome instant, he was back above dark water, hearing a team leader order the search boat home while one name remained unanswered on the radio. "Ward, we're done." That had been the order. He pushed harder. The ice broke. The lid opened 2 inches, and warm, sour air slipped through the gap. The puppy jammed her nose toward it. Elias held her back gently, widened the opening, and raised the lid. Moving blankets lined the footlocker. In their center lay a gray mother cat, curled so tightly that her body formed a wall around 3 newborn kittens. Frost silvered the tips of her whiskers. Her eyes opened only halfway, but one front paw remained spread across the kittens as if she could hold warmth in by force. 2 kittens moved beneath her chest. The third lay still. Elias stared down at the small family. The mother cat lifted her head less than an inch. She did not hiss. She had nothing left for a warning. She simply looked at him, then lowered her chin over her babies again. Heat gathered behind his eyes before he could stop it. One tear crossed his cheek and turned cold beside his nose. The sight did not remind him of combat. It reminded him of the moment after, the empty seat, the unused gear, the terrible knowledge that loyalty could remain even when strength was gone. "I've got you," he said, though his voice came rough. "All 4 of you." He reached beneath the blankets and lifted the entire nest rather than separating the kittens from their mother. The gray cat weighed almost nothing. He transferred them onto the first thermal blanket, folded it loosely around them, and placed a warmed pack from his trauma kit outside the inner layer so it would not touch their skin directly. The puppy climbed onto his thigh, trying to reach them. "You too." Elias opened the utility sling. She resisted when he touched her belly, but the fight left as quickly as it came. He supported her chest and hindquarters, settled her against his side, and covered her with the second blanket. Her head stayed turned toward the bundle in his other arm. He carried them to the truck through a wall of snow. Inside, he lowered the heater and aimed the vents away from the animals. Too much heat too quickly could cause more trouble. He placed the cat's bundle in a shallow equipment bin on the passenger floor so it could not slide. The puppy went beside it. She dragged herself forward until her nose rested on the blanket covering the kittens. Elias picked up the radio microphone. "Blackfire Dispatch, Rescue 4. I need Morrow Creek Veterinary Center notified. one juvenile German Shepherd, severe cold exposure, and probable dehydration, one adult cat, and 3 neonates, one non-responsive. We are leaving Pier 9 now. Static answered, then the dispatcher's calm voice. Copy, Rescue 4. Morrow Creek is being notified. County road crew reports visibility under 50 yards. Understood. He looked at the puppy. Her eyes had closed, but her nose remained against the bundle. We'll use 40. Elias shifted into 4-wheel drive and pulled onto the service road. He did not race. The lake had erased the shoulders, and urgency without control was only another kind of danger. He counted road markers, kept the engine steady, and listened for movement from the passenger floor. A thin mew rose from beneath the blanket. The puppy opened her eyes. "That's right," Elias said. "Stay with them." At the junction, he glanced in the mirror. The old dock had already vanished behind blowing snow. Only his tire tracks remained, and even those were filling in. Something made him look at the rear step. The footlocker. He had left it open beside the dock, still chained to nothing, its metal shell holding whatever Story had placed 4 animals inside it. Tessa Quinn would need the scene undisturbed, but she would also need the object before the storm buried it. Elias radioed the coordinates, requested a deputy and evidence recovery, then continued toward the clinic. Lives first, answers second. 10 minutes later, his radio crackled. A road officer had reached Pier 9 before closure and secured the locker. She had brushed ice from the lid while photographing it. "Rescue 4, the dispatcher said. The deputy found a name stamped under the handle. Do you recognize Daniel Mercer? Elias tightened his grip on the wheel. He knew the name. Everyone in the county rescue program did. Daniel Mercer had been a Navy diver, a local instructor, and a man buried with full honors 6 winters ago. Yet his footlocker had been chained beside a frozen lake that morning, with 4 living animals sealed inside. The clinic doors opened before Elias reached them. Dr. Naomi Bell stood beneath the awning in Navy scrubs and a red winter coat, one gloved hand holding the door while the other pointed him toward a rolling cart. She was a lean woman in her 40s, with silver beginning at her temples and the steady posture of someone who had learned not to waste motion during an emergency. "Cat first," she said. "Keep the puppy wrapped." Elias set the bundle into a padded basin on the cart. Naomi rolled it through the lobby while a veterinary technician took the utility sling from his arms. The German Shepherd puppy protested with a weak twist, reaching her narrow muzzle toward the moving blankets. "Same room," Elias told her. "You're staying together." The puppy did not understand the words, but she stopped struggling when the technician carried her behind Naomi. Outside, the blizzard pressed a white palm against the glass. Inside, fluorescent lights turned everything sharp, the steel tables, the sealed cabinets, the frost melting from Elias's sleeves. He followed the team into treatment and stopped where Naomi told him to stop. That was harder than it should have been. The mother cat lay curved around her kittens exactly as Elias had found her. Naomi slid the family onto a warmed pad without pulling them apart. She checked the cat's breathing, gums, and temperature, then covered her with dry towels. The smallest kitten remained still near the mother's chest. "Don't feed them yet," Naomi told the technician. "Warm first, slow and controlled." She lifted the unresponsive kitten in both hands. It was gray like its mother, with white no larger than a thumbnail beneath its chin. Naomi cleared its mouth, fitted a tiny oxygen mask over its face, and began rubbing its back with a warm cloth. Elias watched from the tape line on the floor. He had spent years learning how to enter a room, read it, and become useful. Here, usefulness meant keeping his hands down. He curled them around the edge of his wet parka instead. At the second table, the technician examined the puppy. Her weight drew a quiet frown. The woman placed a stethoscope against the narrow chest, checked the paws for cold injury, and began preparing warmed fluids. The puppy's head came up when the kitten's oxygen line hissed. She tried to rise, but her front legs folded beneath her. "Easy," Elias said. She looked at him, then at the basin holding the cat. Naomi did not glance away from the kitten. "Does she have a name?" "Not one I know." "She'll need something on the chart." The puppy pushed once more against the towel, too stubborn to accept what her body had already decided. "Moxie," Elias said. The technician wrote it down. "That fits." Naomi continued working. The two other kittens made thin, irregular movements beneath their mother's foreleg. The mother cat opened her eyes when Naomi touched them, but she could not lift her head. Her paw stayed extended over all three. "Her name is Mara," the technician said after passing a scanner between the cat's shoulders. "The chip is registered through a local foster network." "Contact comes after stabilization," Naomi replied. "Let's give her a chance to answer for herself first." The smallest kitten still did not move. Elias looked through the narrow window in the treatment room door. Snow swarmed beneath the parking lot lights. Somewhere beyond it, a deputy was handling the Footlocker at Pier 9. He knew he should call county dispatch, confirm the scene, start building a timeline. Instead, his attention stayed on Naomi's hands. "Mr. Ward." He turned. A woman had entered the room without his noticing. Deputy Tessa Quinn was compact and straight-backed, with a dark braid tucked inside her uniform collar and melting snow on her shoulders. A body camera showed a steady green light above her vest pocket. She carried 2 clear evidence sleeves and a sealed phone pouch. "Elias is fine." "Then Tessa is fine." She glanced at the animals, and something in her expression softened before professional focus returned. "My partner has the dock closed. The Footlocker is photographed, secured, and on its way to the evidence garage. We recovered the cut chain and padlock, and we documented your tool marks. The bolt cutter is in Rescue 4. Leave it there until I photograph it." Elias nodded. Daniel Mercer's name was under the handle. "I saw it. He taught cold water response in this county. Navy diver. Passed away 6 years ago." "I found the obituary." Tessa pulled a small notebook from her pocket. "I also found a surviving spouse with a local address. I'll contact her after the road crew clears access." Elias looked toward the storm. "I can reach Navy records faster." "No." The answer came without heat, which made it firmer. "I have people who can confirm issue dates and service history," he said, "and if one of them opens a restricted file as a favor, every question after that gets harder. The name is an engraving, not a verdict. Let me find out how the locker moved through the world after Daniel Mercer was gone." The old part of Elias, the one that measured delays in heartbeats, wanted to push back. Then Moxie shifted on the table. The technician had positioned her bed where she could see Mara's basin. She had stopped trying to stand. She was letting someone else work. Elias let out a slow breath. "All right." Tessa studied him for half a second, as if she knew what the answer had cost. "Tell me about the tire track." For the next 20 minutes, he gave her facts. Width, tread, direction, the melted patch beside the Footlocker, the condition of the chain, what he had touched, and what he had not. Tessa wrote everything down. She never asked what he thought it meant. Behind them, Naomi kept working on the kitten. The little body had gained color, but the chest movement was too slight for Elias to trust his eyes. Naomi lowered the oxygen mask and motioned him closer. "Put one finger here," she said. Elias stepped over the tape line. Naomi guided his index finger to the kitten's side, behind the tiny front leg. At first he felt only the warmth of the cloth and the faint tremor in his own hand. Then something touched him from within. One beat, a pause, another beat, small and stubborn as a knock from the far side of a door. Elias closed his eyes. "There you are," Naomi whispered. The kitten drew a shallow breath on its own. Naomi returned it beside Mara, keeping the oxygen close. The mother cat's paw moved across its back by less than an inch. Moxie saw the motion. Her chin lowered onto the edge of her bed, and her eyes finally closed. "She's been holding herself awake," the technician said. "Then let her sleep," Elias replied. Naomi pulled off her gloves. "They're not out of danger, but all 4 cats are responding. Moxie's temperature is rising, and her heart sounds stronger after fluids." "Nobody makes promises this early." She looked at Elias. "But you got them here with time left." Time left. The phrase settled differently than it once had. The front bell chimed near noon, though the storm made the windows look like evening. Tessa returned from the lobby with an older woman wearing a camel-colored coat over a black dress. Snow had dampened her short white hair. She carried a plastic document envelope against her chest with both hands. "Elias, this is Grace Mercer," Tessa said. Grace looked first at the animals, then at him. Her face held the composed exhaustion of someone forced to speak of an old loss before breakfast. "You found Daniel's footlocker?" she asked. "I found the animals inside it." "Then somebody else found the locker first." Grace opened the envelope. "It hasn't been mine since October." She removed a death certificate, a photograph, and a donation receipt. The photograph showed a broad-shouldered man beside the same steel locker, one boot resting on its lower rail. He was laughing at something outside the frame. The receipt came from North Shore Veterans Outreach and listed household goods, dive manuals, winter coats, and 1 military footlocker. Elias remembered that laugh. Daniel had taught one of the county's winter rescue seminars before Elias enlisted, back when Elias had been the youngest volunteer in the room and too proud to admit he had never worked open water under shelf ice. Daniel had corrected his rope setup without embarrassing him. Then he had made Elias reset it 10 times. The lesson had stayed long after the instructor was gone. A rescue system had to work for frightened hands, not just skilled ones. "Daniel used it for training equipment," Grace said. "After he passed, I kept it because his name was on it. That wasn't a good enough reason forever." The veterans group was collecting gear for an animal transport program. Blankets, crates, anything sturdy. Tessa placed the receipt inside an evidence sleeve. "Do you remember who collected it?" "A warehouse manager named Mason. He put a little tracking tag on every large item before loading the truck." Tessa's phone rang. She answered, listened, and asked the caller to send photographs before touching anything else. When she ended the call, the room had gone still. "Evidence found a tag beneath the rear hinge," she said. "RFID inventory label. The database says Mercer Footlocker 184 is still sitting in Storage Bay C at North Shore Veterans Outreach." Grace looked at the copy of the receipt. "But it wasn't." "No." Tessa turned her phone so Elias could see the scan log. "It left yesterday at 3:42 in the afternoon, loaded onto vehicle LT07. Below the vehicle number sat the name of the company that had signed it out. Lakeshore Animal Transit. Rachel Boone arrived with snow packed into the seams of her boots and guilt written plainly across her face. She was 34, small-framed beneath an olive parka, with auburn hair twisted into a braid that had begun coming loose in the storm. A canvas folder bulged under one arm. She paused inside the clinic doors, long enough to see Elias, Tessa, and Grace gathered near the treatment room window. "Which one is Mara?" she asked. Naomi led her to the glass. The mother cat rested inside a warmed enclosure, 3 kittens tucked along her belly. A clear line supplied fluids beneath the towel. Across the room, Moxie slept in a padded crate, with her nose pushed against the wire facing Mara. Rachel pressed her fingers to her lips. "I handed them over yesterday," she said. "Both of them." Tessa guided her toward the empty consultation room. "Start with where?" Rachel sat, but did not remove her coat. She placed the folder on the table and opened it to a stack of intake forms, vaccination records, and printed emails. Every page had a colored tab. The organization in the header was Lakeshore Animal Transit. Rachel ran a foster network called Second Porch out of 3 private homes and a converted laundry building behind a church. It was not a shelter, she explained. It had no government contract, no paid kennel staff, and no magical supply of empty rooms. When the furnace failed during the first hard freeze, 12 cats and 4 dogs had to be moved in a single afternoon. Lakeshore called us, she said. They said they had partner shelters south of the storm line. They sent photos of clean vans, climate-controlled crates, all of it. Mara had come to Rachel 2 weeks earlier after being found beneath a loading ramp. Her intake examination showed that she was close to delivering, and Lakeshore had promised a quiet maternity foster south of the storm line. Moxie arrived the following day from a roadside pickup, underweight and unchipped. The puppy had refused the dog run and planted herself outside Mara's enclosure instead. Whenever the cat called, Moxie scratched at the blanket covering the crate until Rachel let them see each other. Rachel had tried moving Moxie into the heated office on the first night. The puppy paced from door to door, too tired to bark, until Rachel carried her bed back to the laundry room. Mara had watched from behind the crate wire. Once the bed touched the floor, the cat settled, and Moxie curled against the outside panel. They had not shared food or played. Their bond was quieter than that. 2 frightened animals using the other's breathing to measure whether the room was safe. I thought separating them for transport would make things worse, Rachel said. Lakeshore agreed to move them together. Who collected them? Tessa asked. A driver named Cal. He scanned Mara's chip and gave me a transfer code. I watched him load both carriers. Was the Footlocker in the vehicle? Rachel's forehead tightened. There was a steel trunk behind the front seats. I didn't see a name on it. I thought it held blankets. Elias leaned against the wall, keeping his hands still. What time? 12:20. The RFID log showed Daniel Mercer's Footlocker leaving the Veterans Warehouse at 3:42, 3 hours and 22 minutes after Cal collected the animals. Tessa wrote the times beside one another. What were you told happened next? Rachel opened a laptop. That's the part I don't understand. She signed into a partner portal and pulled up Mara's page. A photograph showed the gray cat sitting upright on a folded quilt, healthy enough to glare at the camera. Below it was Moxie's temporary record. Female German Shepherd, estimated 4 months, black and tan coat, no chip. Both files carried green status bars. Placement complete. Rachel clicked the details. Mara had been marked adopted at 3:16 p.m. Moxie had been marked adopted at the same minute. There was no adopter name, no destination shelter, no veterinary clearance, no receiving signature. Rachel opened another file, then another. The screen filled with green check marks. They stood in neat rows beside photographs of a senior terrier, 2 orange cats, a spotted hound, a rabbit with 1 folded ear. Different intake dates, different foster homes. Yet every file had been batch closed on the same afternoon at 3:16 p.m., down to the same minute, as though 27 living animals had passed through 27 front doors at once. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The green looked cheerful. That was the worst part. It was the color systems used to say, finished, safe, nothing more required. Can software do that? Grace asked. Software can do whatever someone tells it to do, Tessa said. Rachel, do you consent to me making a forensic copy of these records and your emails? Take everything. Rachel pushed the laptop toward her. I'll sign whatever you need. Elias looked through the glass at Moxie. The puppy's paws twitched in sleep. Yesterday afternoon, while a green check declared her safely adopted, she had been riding toward Pier 9. Who runs Lakeshore? He asked. Derek Sloan, Rachel said. He speaks at every county fundraiser. He says shelters fail because they care with their hearts instead of their ledgers. And people applaud that? Rachel looked down at the files. When you have animals sleeping in hallways and winter coming through the walls, efficiency sounds a lot like mercy. She opened one of Sloane's fundraising messages. His photograph showed a clean gray suit, a blue tie, and one hand resting on the edge of a spotless transport crate. Behind him, a slogan promised that no animal would be stranded by geography. Rachel had forwarded that message to 6 foster volunteers herself. Now her own note remained above it in the email chain. This may be the partner we've been praying for. She closed the message without deleting it. I helped him look trustworthy. You preserve that email, Tessa said, and you help us find out whether he was. Tessa requested a recorded call. Rachel agreed, and Grace stepped into the hall while Tessa placed the phone on speaker. Derek Sloan answered on the 4th ring with the polished patience of a man expecting a donor. Lakeshore Animal Transit, Derek speaking. Tessa identified herself and asked about vehicle LT07, Mara's chip number, and the 2 placement records. There was a small pause. Paper shifted at the other end. Deputy, we're operating on reduced staff because of the storm, Sloan said. Our database migration has created duplicate timestamps. It's annoying, but it isn't unusual. Where are the animals? Placed with a partner. Which partner? I don't have that screen in front of me. Rachel Boone's portal has no receiving shelter, adopter, signature, or medical clearance. Sloan gave a gentle laugh. Foster portals aren't legal records, they're convenience tools. I'm happy to have our compliance officer send the correct paperwork when the weather allows. Elias heard the shape of the answer, not a lie he could prove. A wall made of procedure built one reasonable sentence at a time. Tessa asked whether Sloan knew Daniel Mercer or had possession of his Footlocker. We receive hundreds of donated items, Sloan replied. If a driver used the wrong container, that's an equipment control problem. It doesn't mean anyone harmed an animal. Rachel's chair scraped backward. Elias put a hand on the table before she could reach for the phone. Not holding her, just marking the boundary. Tessa's voice remained level. Preserve all records connected to LT07, Cal Dwyer, Mara's chip, the German Shepherd intake, and Mercer Footlocker 184. Do not alter or destroy any associated data. Of course, we'll cooperate fully. The call ended. He knows, Rachel said. He knows we're asking, Tessa corrected. That's what I can say. Elias pushed away from the wall. Where is the warehouse? Tessa looked at him. No. You heard him buying time. I heard a man give incomplete answers on a recorded call. I'm sending the preservation request now. A request won't stop a truck. Neither will you showing up without authority and giving him a reason to close the gate. The consultation room seemed suddenly too small. Elias felt the knots of the cord bracelet beneath his sleeve. There had been a time when hesitation carried its own cost, when every minute of delay pushed a missing man farther into black water. That lesson lived in muscle, not reason. Tessa lowered her voice. You brought 5 lives through a whiteout because you knew control mattered more than speed. Use the same judgment now. 5. Moxie, Mara, and 3 kittens. Elias looked through the glass again. Naomi had moved Moxie's padded crate closer to Mara's enclosure. The puppy remained asleep. She had done what she could and surrendered the rest to other hands. What do you need from me? He asked. Road conditions and safe access if we get legal grounds to enter, nothing more. It was not the answer he wanted. It was a job. I'll call the county plow supervisor. Rachel remained at the laptop while Tessa copied the portal records. She opened archived emails, searching for attachments from Lakeshore. Most were donation requests and cheerful placement summaries. One subject line stopped her. Winter relocation. Final manifest. The message had arrived shortly before dawn and gone unread while Rachel drove to the clinic. It thanked partner Foster's for helping make room ahead of the weather and listed a departure scheduled for 5:30 that evening. Tessa opened the attached manifest. Vehicle LT-07 appeared at the top. Below it were 9 animal records, each assigned a numbered transport crate. A second page listed equipment loaded for the same trip. Elias counted the crate serials once, then again. 18, he said. Rachel looked over his shoulder. There are only 9 animals. Every crate was described as a medium live animal carrier. None was marked empty. None was assigned to supplies. Tessa checked the departure line. The route led north along the lake, toward roads the county expected to close within 2 hours. 9 animals existed on paper. 18 crates were leaving in the storm. Tessa read the manifest 3 times before she touched her radio. The first time, she checked the numbers. The second, she checked the route. The third, she searched for the kind of harmless explanation that could survive all the missing names. None appeared. LT-07 is already connected to the Footlocker, she said. Now it's scheduled to carry 18 live animal crates into a road closure with only 9 animals declared. Rachel stood beside the consultation table, arms folded tightly across her coat. Can you stop it? I can ask the North Patrol to locate it. Stopping and searching are different questions. Tessa radioed the vehicle description and requested current conditions along the lake road. Elias called the county plow supervisor from the hallway. The answer was worse than he expected. Wind had filled the northbound cut within 20 minutes of the last pass. One plow had turned back after losing sight of its own wing marker. The wall clock showed 3:48 p.m. If the manifest was accurate, Lakeshore planned to leave in less than 2 hours. Naomi stepped from treatment and lowered her mask. Mara's temperature is stable. The kittens have taken small amounts of formula after warming. Moxie is awake, but she stays on bed rest. Can Rachel see them? Elias asked. For a minute, quietly. Rachel followed Naomi through the inner door. Elias remained with Tessa, studying a county road map spread across the table. The Lakeshore warehouse sat south of town in an industrial park. The manifest route led north, but no destination appeared on either page. The front bell rang. A man stamped snow from his boots in the lobby. He was in his late 40s, tall without standing straight, with a narrow wind-burned face and sandy hair flattened by a knit cap. A brown work coat hung loose from his shoulders. He carried a clipboard inside a clear plastic sleeve. "Afternoon," he called. "I'm here for the shepherd and the gray cat." Tessa folded the map. Elias watched her posture change by a degree. Nothing dramatic. One foot moved back, giving her a clearer view of the man's hands. "Who sent you?" she asked. "Lakeshore Animal Transit. Name's Cal Dwyer." He held out the clipboard. Tessa did not take it immediately. "You drove LT-07 yesterday?" Cal's eyes moved from her uniform to Elias and back. "Sometimes. We rotate vehicles." "Were you driving it yesterday?" "I'd have to check my route sheet." He lifted the clipboard slightly. "Mr. Sloan said there was confusion about 2 transfers. I have authorization to return them to our partner facility." Rachel came through the treatment room door before Naomi could stop her. "I didn't authorize anything." Cal looked at the signature page. "Rachel Boone?" "That's my name. That isn't my signature." Naomi moved between Cal and the inner hallway. "No patient leaves this building without my medical clearance." "I'm not trying to cause trouble," Cal said. "I'm just doing the pickup." From behind the treatment room glass came the scrape of a blanket. Moxie had been lying with her head near the crate door. Now her body pressed against the rear wall, her ears flattened, her tail drew beneath her, and a tremor moved from her shoulders to her hind legs. Cal's coat carried 2 smells into the warm clinic: diesel fuel and the sharp cedar disinfectant used in transport kennels. Moxie pushed herself farther back. The smell reached Elias a moment later, mixed with wet canvas and cold air. He did not mistake the puppy's fear for testimony. Dogs formed associations quickly, especially under stress. The scent might belong to Cal, his truck, the warehouse, or 100 other bad moments. It proved nothing, but it told him where to look. Cal's boots were dusted with road salt. Beneath the white crust, reddish-black grit had packed into the seams around the soles, the same ore-stained gravel that surfaced beside Pier 9. Elias met Tessa's eyes, then glanced down once. She followed the movement without turning her head. "Set the clipboard on the counter, Mr. Dwyer," she said. Cal's grip tightened. "Why?" "Because Ms. Boone disputes the signature, the animals are receiving emergency care, and the vehicle associated with your company is connected to an active investigation. I'm detaining you while I verify the document." "Detaining me?" "That means you're not free to leave yet. It also means you're not under arrest." "Put the clipboard down." Cal obeyed. Tessa read him his rights in a calm, even voice. Cal said he understood. Before answering any questions, he signed a written consent form allowing her to preserve the Cloud Dash Cam files tied to his company root account. He had not yet asked for an attorney. Tessa called for another deputy, photographed the document where it lay, and asked Rachel to write a brief statement denying the signature. Naomi shut the treatment room door so Moxie no longer had to see the lobby. Elias remained by the wall. He could feel Cal measuring him. The size, the stance, the short stubble, the paracord bracelet showing beneath one glove. Men often read silence as a threat when they already feared what might be said. "You found the trunk," Cal said. It was the first sentence he offered without being asked. Tessa looked up. "How do you know it was a trunk?" Cal's mouth opened, then closed. "Derek told me." "Mr. Sloan called it a container when I spoke to him. He never described it." "Then I must have seen it on the route sheet." "The route sheet you said you needed to check?" Cal looked toward the door. Elias spoke quietly. "Moxie kept snow off the air holes." Cal swallowed. "Every time the wind covered them, she dug them clear," Elias continued. "The mother cat was wrapped around 3 kittens. One had stopped responding by the time I opened the lid." "I didn't pack them." "I didn't say you did." "I only drove the truck." The words arrived too fast, worn smooth by repetition. Tessa asked how long he had worked for Lakeshore. Cal rubbed a thumb along the cracked edge of the counter before answering. 11 months. "Where do you live?" "Apartment above the South Warehouse." "Owned by the company?" He nodded. Sloan deducted rent, uniforms, fuel advances, and old vehicle damage from each paycheck. Cal spoke of the deductions as if reading weather observations, things a person endured because arguing did not stop them. He had lost his commercial license once, and Sloan had paid the reinstatement fees. Every month since then, the balance seemed to grow instead of shrink. "So he owns your job, your truck, and the roof over your head," Tessa said. "He gave me another chance." Elias had heard that kind of loyalty before, gratitude sharpened into a leash. It explained why Cal stayed. It did not excuse where he had driven. Tessa set her pen down. "Did you drive them to Pier 9? "No." "Did you take Mercer Footlocker 184 from the Veterans Warehouse?" "Equipment moves all the time." "Did it move in your vehicle?" Cal stared at the floor. "Derek handles the manifests." Elias saw the same pattern Sloan had used on the phone. Responsibility broken into pieces, small enough for each person to claim he held none of it. "How long did you tell yourself you couldn't hear them?" Elias asked. Cal's face changed. Not confession, not yet. The hard line around his mouth simply failed for a second, showing the exhausted man underneath. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said. The second deputy arrived and took Cal into the consultation room for a recorded interview. Tessa retained the disputed form and Cal's route sheet. Before the door closed, Elias saw a handwritten notation beside the previous day's final stop, P9 Hold Pier 9. Rachel finished her written statement at the lobby desk. She signed her name 3 times for comparison, each signature beginning with a narrow loop in the R and ending with the final E rising above the line. The transfer form used square block letters and placed the surname first. It was not a skilled imitation, it was the kind of falsehood made by someone accustomed to nobody checking. Tessa did not celebrate the discovery. It places a route notation at the scene. We still need context. Elias nodded, though the evidence felt like a current pulling north. He had already begun calculating drive time, plow intervals, tow points, and where a rescue truck might turn around on the unregistered road. The old instinct urged him to move before permission caught up. He forced himself to write the calculations on the back of a road closure sheet and hand them to Tessa instead. Daniel Mercer's lesson returned. A system had to work for frightened hands. Charging alone into the storm was not a system. It was one more frightened hand pretending to be enough. Rachel looked through the treatment room window. Moxie had moved forward again, now that Cal was gone from sight. Naomi sat on the floor outside the crate, one hand resting near the wire without reaching in. "What happens to him?" Rachel asked. "That depends on what he says and what the records show," Tessa replied. Her phone vibrated. The screen displayed an email from an address made of random numbers. The subject line read, "The portal is not the ledger." There were 4 attachments. The first showed a paper inventory book open beneath a calloused hand. Unlike the online records, the pages listed intake numbers, crate numbers, fuel charges, and handwritten destination codes. Several rows had been crossed out in black marker. Mara's chip number remained visible beneath one line. The second attachment was a photograph of Mason Greer's employee badge. The man in the picture had a broad, tired face, close-cropped gray hair, and the guarded expression of someone accustomed to standing behind a warehouse counter. The third was a map pin on the far side of Blackfur Bay, well north of the registered Lakeshore building. No company appeared at the address. Satellite imagery showed a low industrial structure beside an abandoned cold storage yard. The fourth image had been taken through a dirty window less than 5 minutes earlier. Snow streaked sideways across the frame. Vehicle LT-07 stood backed against the unregistered building. Its rear doors were open. 2 figures in winter coats were carrying covered animal crates from the loading bay. A message appeared beneath the attachments. "My name is Mason Greer. Sloan changed the departure time. They are loading now." The authorization arrived at 4:31 p.m. Tessa had spent 22 minutes on the phone with the county attorney, animal welfare officer, and duty judge, while Mason's photographs continued arriving. The signed order covered the unregistered cold storage building, vehicle LT-07, the transport crates, and records connected to the animals listed in Rachel's portal. It did not make the road passable. Elias stood over the county map with Gene Holloway, the plow supervisor, a heavy-shouldered man whose white beard held permanent traces of road salt. Gene marked the drifts with a carpenter's pencil. "This cut will be gone," he said. "This bridge may still be open. If the wind shifts east, neither matters." Elias drew a route through an old service lane behind the paper mill. "Lead with the wing plow. Rescue 4 follows. Law enforcement and animal control stay in our tracks. Nobody passes the plow." Tessa came from the consultation room fastening her coat. Cal confirmed the location. Did he confirm Pier 9? No. He asked for an attorney before answering that, so the question stopped, but he had already signed consent for us to preserve his cloud dashcam account. She held up her phone. "The upload from yesterday is intact." The hard line in Cal's face had finally broken. Not because a threat frightened him, Tessa said, but because Naomi let him see the warmed enclosure through the glass. Mara had lifted her head. 3 kittens had moved beside her. Moxie had watched Cal from the other room and pressed backward until he left. "He said Sloan told him the animals were already written off," Tessa said. He kept repeating that phrase. Written off. Elias thought of the green checks on Rachel's screen. He pulled his hood up. "Let's keep the rest from becoming paperwork." The convoy left Morrow Creek at 4:43. Gene's plow pulled pushed into the storm first, amber lights turning the snow the color of weak fire. Rescue 4 followed 20 feet behind. Tessa rode in a sheriff's utility vehicle with another deputy. The county animal welfare van came last, carrying Dr. Naomi's emergency supplies and 6 empty carriers Rachel had provided. The lake remained invisible, but Elias could feel it in the wind. Cold pressed across the road from the left, steady and immense. Snow erased the plow's work almost as soon as the convoy passed. Every few minutes, Jean's voice came over the radio, naming a hazard before headlights reached it. Stalled pickup, downed limb, ice under the railroad bridge. Nobody spoke more than necessary. At 5:12, they turned through a gap in a chain-link fence. The cold storage yard appeared in pieces. First a leaning sign, then the flat roof of the building, then the dark rectangle of an open loading bay. LT-07 stood beside a box trailer. Its engine was running. Mason Greer waited inside the bay with both hands visible. He looked older than his employee photograph, broad through the chest but bent by more than the weather. Close-cropped gray hair showed beneath his cap. A paper ledger was tucked under his coat. "They moved the departure up again," he called. "Sloan's in the cab." Tessa raised her badge and announced the order. The truck's engine revved. LT-07 pulled forward 6 feet before Jean drove the plow across the exit. The truck stopped. Derek Sloan climbed down wearing a clean charcoal overcoat, better suited to a fundraiser than a loading yard. He was in his early 50s, silver-haired, square-glassed, and visibly offended by every flake landing on him. "You're blocking a licensed animal transfer," he said. "Turn off the engine and step away from the vehicle," Tessa replied. "Those animals have receiving partners." "Then their records will show us." Sloan looked past her at Mason. "You have no idea what you've done." Mason removed the ledger from his coat. "I know exactly what I didn't do soon enough." While Tessa secured the office and records, Elias inspected the route between the loading bay and the heated animal welfare van. Wind had built a waist-high drift across half the yard. A shallow drainage slope fell away on the trailer's right side, hidden beneath powder. The trailer tires rested on glazed ice. "No unloading through the rear," Elias told the welfare officer, Lena Ortiz. "The grade is wrong. We use the side door, establish a hand line, and move one carrier at a time." Lena, a sturdy woman with clear goggles and a yellow rescue shell, nodded. "I need an assessment team inside first. 2 people, tethered. Gene keeps the plow as a windbreak." He assigned positions instead of taking them all. Gene anchored a recovery line from the plow to the trailer frame. Lena and her technician entered the loading bay. Mason cleared the interior aisle and read crate numbers. A deputy remained with Sloan. Elias checked each knot, then handed the working end to another rescue volunteer. The old instinct argued with every assignment. "Go inside. Check the animals. Hold the line. Watch Sloan. Do it yourself, and nothing gets missed." Instead, Elias stood where he could see the whole passage. The first carrier emerged under a wool cover. Inside, a senior beagle lifted its graying muzzle toward the warmer air. The second held 2 rabbits pressed together. Then came a tabby cat, a small mixed-breed dog, and 3 carriers whose numbers did not appear anywhere on the manifest. The animals were frightened and cold. Some water bowls had tipped during loading. None of the scene needed exaggeration. The silence inside the trailer said enough. Lena marked each carrier, photographed its condition, and passed it along the human line. Hands received, carried, and released. No one person held an animal for more than a few seconds. 9 documented, Mason called from inside. 9 off book. 18 crates. 18 animals. Sloan stood beneath the bay light with snow collecting on his shoulders. Off book doesn't mean mistreated. We place difficult animals through private channels. Without names? Rachel's voice came through Tessa's speakerphone from the clinic. She was identifying intake numbers as Mason read them. Without microchip transfers? Without medical clearance? Sloan stopped answering. Then he looked at Tessa and spoke as if the volunteers were not there. Every shelter calls when the cages fill. Every foster wants someone else to take the animal that needs 6 months of care and will never recover the cost. I built routes they were too sentimental to build. Healthy animals paid for the difficult ones. And the ones marked cleared? Tessa asked. A ledger category. Mason's face tightened. They were breathing when you made them a category. Sloan adjusted his glasses. You signed the inventory. I signed counts. You changed destinations after I went home. The exchange lasted less than a minute, but Elias understood the structure of the place. Sloan had not hidden from compassion. He had converted it into columns until no individual decision looked large enough to carry blame. The 12th carrier crossed the yard when the trailer moved. It began with a slow, sideways drift, almost gentle. The right wheels slipped toward the hidden drainage slope. The trailer tongue pulled against the truck, turning the cab by inches. A carrier inside struck the wall. Then another. "Stop the line," Elias shouted. The trailer kept sliding. Jean's recovery cable snapped tight and shuddered. The plow shifted half a foot on the ice. 6 animals remained inside. Elias saw 3 problems at once: the trailer's angle, the overloaded cable, and the volunteers standing in the path of both. Years ago, he would have run for the hitch and trusted everyone else to understand. This time he pointed. Jean, set the blade and bring winch 2 online. Lena, clear the fall zone. Mason, brace the interior carriers low and stay off the downhill wall. North side team, take 2 people and cut a second path from the side door to the van. The yard separated into motion. Jean dropped the plow blade until steel bit through snow to gravel. A second line ran from Rescue 4 to the trailer's rear frame, forming a wide V. Lena moved the welfare team uphill. 2 volunteers drove traction boards beneath the trailer tires while Elias controlled the tension from the winch remote. The trailer slid another inch, then stopped. "Hold both lines," Elias said. "Resume the passage, 1 crate at a time." Mason appeared at the side door with a carrier against his chest. His boots shook on the step. Elias did not climb up to take it from him. He called the next person forward. Hands met the carrier, then more hands. The animal reached the heated van. Tessa's phone chimed as the 14th crate crossed. Cal's cloud files had arrived. The dashcam showed the Footlocker being loaded at the veterans' warehouse and the 2 carriers collected from second porch. A time-stamped interior clip later showed Mara, already in labor, being moved into the vented Footlocker at the warehouse. At Pier 9, Cal opened the rear doors and Moxie forced her way through the damaged latch of her carrier. She ran to the Footlocker and refused to leave it. The final exterior clip showed LT-07 pulling away without her. Audio from inside the cab captured Sloan instructing Cal to remove the animals from the active manifest and clear the unplaced inventory before inspection. Mason handed Tessa the paper ledger. Its original entries connected each missing portal record to fuel purchases, vehicle numbers, and handwritten destination codes. The RFID history supplied the object. Rachel's files supplied the animals. Cal's video supplied the route and instructions. Layer upon layer, no single miracle, just people finally placing what they knew into the next pair of hands. The last carrier held a black cat with 1 white paw. When Lena lifted the cover, the cat blinked at the lights and gave a tired complaint. 18 accounted for, she called. Elias waited until the heated van doors closed before releasing the winches. Tessa remained with Sloan and the evidence team. The rescue convoy began backing through Jean's plowed corridor, 1 vehicle at a time. Rescue 4 cleared the service lane last. Behind Elias, a slab of wind-packed snow broke from the bluff and spilled across the access road, burying the tracks they had used minutes earlier. The cold storage yard disappeared behind White. Ahead, the animal welfare van's red lights remained visible through the storm. Elias followed them home. By March, Lake Superior had begun breaking its own ice. Long blue fractures crossed the white surface beyond Blackfear County, and daylight stayed late enough to turn them silver. Snow still covered the shaded roads, but roofs dripped at noon. The town had reached that uncertain part of winter when every morning belonged to January, and every afternoon hinted at spring. Moxie had doubled in size. She stood in Elias's kitchen with 4 solid paws, a thick black and tan coat, and both ears upright at last. The narrow ribs he had first seen beside the footlocker were gone. She ate from a slow-feeding bowl because the memory of hunger still made her rush. She slept on a bed near the mudroom door because she preferred to know where the exits were. Some memories remained in her body. The first time Elias dropped a length of tire chain in the garage, Moxie flattened beneath his workbench before the final link stopped moving. He had not pulled her out or filled the silence with comfort she could not use. He sat sideways on the floor, rolled pieces of chicken toward the edge of the bench, and waited. 10 minutes passed before her nose appeared. 20 before one paw crossed the shadow. The next day he began again from farther away with a single metal link and a quieter sound. Progress came in inches. Elias understood inches. He had received approval to foster Moxie after her medical hold. When no prior owner appeared and the evidence release was complete, he filed the adoption papers. Rachel inspected his house, checked the fenced yard, and made him answer the same questions she asked everyone else. On Moxie's first night, Elias left every interior door open. She inspected each room without crossing more than a few feet inside, then returned to the mudroom and lay facing the exit. He placed his sleeping bag in the hallway rather than moving her bed. Sometime before dawn, he woke to find her chin resting on the toe of his boot. By the 3rd week, she slept through the furnace turning on. By the 6th, she carried one of his gloves into the kitchen every morning and waited for him to notice. Healing announced itself through small thefts and uninterrupted sleep. "Even former Navy SEALs," he had said, "especially men who think that sentence counts as a reference." It was the first time he had heard her laugh since the storm. Lakeshore Animal Transit never reopened. A court order kept its records and vehicles secured while investigators traced foster transfers across 3 counties. Charges were filed against Derek Sloan over falsified documents, financial records, and the handling of animals in his care. The process moved through hearings and motions instead of the quick ending people wanted. Cal Dwyer entered a cooperation agreement and remained accountable for the routes he had driven. His dashcam archive helped investigators identify animals that had disappeared behind green check marks. Mason Greer turned over the original ledgers and testified about the entries he had ignored. Cooperation did not erase silence. It gave that silence somewhere useful to end. All 18 animals from the cold storage yard survived the night. Some needed longer veterinary care. By early spring, most had entered verified homes. The rest remained with specialized fosters. Rachel kept a photograph of everyone beside the new transfer board at Second Porch. She had rebuilt the system on paper first. Every pickup now required 2 signatures. Every microchip was scanned at departure and arrival. A receiving person had to check in by video before a record could turn green. No animal vanished into the word complete. Rachel printed the old green check page and pinned it beside the new board. She did not keep it as punishment. She kept it because good intentions had once made the missing fields easy to overlook. Now every volunteer could see the difference between a reassuring color and a completed chain of care. Under the printout, Grace had written one sentence in blue ink. "A safe arrival has a name at both ends." On a bright Saturday morning, Elias brought Moxie to the county training field for her first foundation scent session. She wore a soft harness and worked on a 20-foot line. No tactical vest, no official patch. No one called her a search and rescue dog. She was an 8-month-old German shepherd, learning that finding one harmless object could earn praise and a piece of dried liver. Elias let her move across the snow at her own pace. A wool scent sample rested inside a vented metal box buried beneath 6 inches of loose powder. The wind came from the lake, carrying the odor toward the tree line. Moxie crossed the scent cone, stopped, and turned back. Her nose lowered. She followed the edge until the smell strengthened, then began digging. Her claws struck the box. Scratch, pause, scratch. The sound passed through Elias before he could name it. For 1 second, he saw Pier 9 again, the footlocker under the drift, the air holes filling, a small body working against the storm. Moxie stopped digging. She looked at him, not pleading, not fighting alone, waiting for the next cue. Elias loosened his grip on the line. "Show me." Moxie touched her nose to the disturbed snow and sat. Elias marked the behavior with a clear yes, then stepped forward with her reward. Jean Holloway and Lena Ortiz watched from beside the equipment sled. Neither clapped or crowded her. They let the moment remain ordinary, which made it feel larger. "Good indication," Lena said. "Messy feet." "She comes by those honestly," Elias replied. Moxie accepted the treat and leaned briefly against his leg. Then she returned her attention to the field, ready to work again. Foundation training took patience. Recall before distance, confidence before obstacles, indication before any complicated search. Elias did not know whether Moxie would ever earn a certification, and he had stopped needing the future to justify the present. She was safe. She was learning. That was enough work for one day. Grace Mercer arrived near the end of the session carrying a thermos and a photograph in a plain wooden frame. Tessa came with her, off-duty in jeans and a navy jacket. Rachel followed in a van covered with the new Second Porch logo. "I thought rescue training had coffee," Grace said. "It does when somebody brings it," Jean answered. They gathered near the warming shed while Moxie rested on her mat. Grace handed the photograph to Elias. Mara lay across a sunny windowsill in Grace's house. Beside her slept the smallest gray and white kitten, the one whose heartbeat Elias had once felt beneath his finger. "I plan to foster them for 2 weeks," Grace said. Mara disagreed. The other 2 kittens had gone together to a retired teaching couple. Rachel showed Elias a picture of them climbing the same curtain from opposite sides. "They've discovered teamwork," she said. "That isn't teamwork. It is from the kitten's perspective." Tessa poured coffee into the thermos lid and gave Elias the legal update without turning it into a celebration. Sloane's case was still moving. Cal would testify. Mason had accepted a warehouse job elsewhere and volunteered 1 evening a week helping Rachel audit transfer logs. "He asked whether that made things right," Tessa said. "What did you tell him?" "No, it makes the next thing better." Elias looked toward the lake. The answer felt true enough to keep. After the others left, he and Moxie walked to the edge of the training field. Wind moved softly across the crusted snow. Nothing about it resembled the whiteout except the cold, yet Elias could still remember following the animal welfare van's red lights home. 18 carriers had crossed that yard because dozens of hands had each accepted a small part of the weight. For years, he had treated the last unfinished search of his Navy service like a private debt. The team had been ordered back because the water had become too dangerous and another boat was taking over at first light. Elias had heard only the first half of that truth. Ordered back. He had never allowed the second half to matter. Another boat was coming. The man they had lost did not return. No lesson could soften that. But continuing the search had never belonged to Elias alone. Moxie sat beside him, following the movement of a gull above the ice. The blue and silver cord bracelet showed beneath his glove. Elias had worn it so long that the knots had polished smooth. He pulled the bracelet over his hand and threaded it through the solid ring near the handle of Moxie's leash, fastening it where it would not tighten around her or interfere with the clip. It was not a badge. It did not make her a working dog. It was simply a piece of rescue line moving from one handhold to the next. Moxie sniffed it, then looked back toward the training field where Lena was resetting the scent box for another team. "Go ahead," Elias said. They walked back together. Months earlier, a freezing puppy had kept 4 lives breathing beneath a military footlocker until help found them. She had done everything her small body could do. Then she had allowed Elias to open the lid. Elias had carried them to Naomi. Naomi had passed evidence to Tessa. Grace, Rachel, Cal, and Mason had each placed one missing piece into the next pair of hands. At the cold storage yard, a line of strangers had carried 18 animals through the storm. No single person had saved them. That was not a failure of courage. It was what courage looked like when it lasted. Elias followed Moxie across the snow, keeping the line loose between them. Moxie never knew what a ledger was, and she could not understand why the snow kept covering those small air holes. She only knew that living sounds were fading inside the footlocker, so she kept digging. Elias had strength, training, and years of experience, but his greatest act of courage was not opening that steel lid. It was learning to pass each life, each clue, and each responsibility into the right pair of hands. Rachel showed that good intentions still need honest safeguards. Mason and Cal showed that silence can help a harmful system grow, but also that speaking at last can protect whoever comes next. Their cooperation did not erase their choices. It turned those choices into a warning others could use. The blue and silver rescue cord on Moxie's leash became more than a memory. It represented a passage kept open, from a puppy's paws to Elias, from Elias to Naomi, from Naomi to Tessa, and from a line of volunteers to 18 frightened animals carried through a blizzard. Real rescue was never one hero lifting every burden. It was people refusing to let the burden fall between them. There may be someone near you today, a neighbor, a shelter volunteer, an older relative, or even an animal without a voice, who does not need you to solve everything. They may only need one call, one verified handoff, one warm meal, or one person willing to notice that something is wrong. Small acts become lifelines when we place them where help can reach. Perhaps that is how God often answers desperate moments, not always through one sudden miracle, but through many ordinary hands arriving at the right time. May we have the wisdom to recognize our part, the courage to act, and the humility to trust the next person in the line. If Moxie's story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes compassion can survive any storm. In the comments, tell us about an animal or a person who taught you that strength can be gentle. Subscribe and turn on the bell for more stories of courage, loyalty, and second chances.